Hey church, good morning and welcome to worship here at Crossroads. If you're a guest with us this week, we are so excited that you're here. Let's take a moment to learn a little bit more about what's happening this week at Crossroads. This Wednesday at 6 o'clock here at the church will be a financial planning ministry partnership with the Central Christian College of the Bible presentation on wills and other items relating to estate planning. If you would like to attend and learn more, participants will also be given the opportunity to create a will of their own out of this experience. Please show up. Again, that's Wednesday at 6 p.m. On Thursday, the Joy Ministry will be taking a trip to the Missouri River. Details are in your bulletin, and we hope that you'll join Tim and the crew for this exciting trip. There's a couple of big activities happening for the children's ministry that we want to make you aware of. Next Sunday, our children's ministry will be heading to the pumpkin patch. This is an annual experience. We ask that each child bring a parent with them and also $8. Again, that's this coming Sunday at Papa Charlie's Pumpkin Patch for the entire children's ministry. We look forward to seeing you there. Another huge event at Crossroads for the children's ministry is our annual trunk or treat. If you would like to sign up to serve or set up or tear down or provide one of our fun trunks at the trunk or treat, you can sign up to do so at the check-in at the children's ministry downstairs or at the Welcome Center. This year's trunk or treat will of course be held on Halloween, October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m. Again, this is an exciting way for our church to love on the community, and we hope that everyone will attend in various ways and help out. Hey guys, an announcement just for you. This coming Saturday is the Gauntlet. This is a huge event for our church, and we couldn't be more excited about the new opportunities we have with a ton of new competitions. It's a morning competition. It includes lunch, a barbecue, which we all love, and a free t-shirt is included. We need everyone to register, so please go online and do that at maconcrossroads.com/gauntlet. You can even pull up your phone now and register. Again, it's maconcrossroads.com/gauntlet. That's this Saturday, a huge guys event. If you don't want to participate in the competitions, you can also sign up for just a free t-shirt and come join in on watching all the fun. We hope to see you this Saturday at the Gauntlet. Finally, this is Pastor Appreciation Month, and we have provided many ways on which we can love on our pastors and show the guys how much we support them and their families and the commitment and sacrifice they've made to serve the church and the community. There are several ways that you can participate in this. At the Welcome Center, there's a box for you to put notes of encouragement for any of the pastors or all of the pastors. You can also leave monetary gifts or gift cards. We even have come up with the idea, speaking of barbecue, to provide donations of meat to love on our pastors and their families. So if you're interested in that, just see those folks at the Welcome Center. Again, this is all month of October, and we thank our pastors for all they do, and we sure enjoy and look forward to the rest of Pastor Appreciation Month.
Hey church, Craig Fuller here, and as most of you know, this is Pastor Appreciation Month. And so we just want to take a minute to think about our pastors and the work they do here in our church, in our community. Most of us go to work every day and we do really important stuff that affects people's lives for years or generations down the road. But a pastor's work has an effect on people's lives, not only for today and tomorrow and for a couple of years, but a pastor's work affects people's souls for an eternity. The work they do is tremendous. It's of tremendous importance. And so probably a lot of us maybe can't relate to that, or the stress and the burden that our pastors carry. And so a lot of pastors lay their head down at night and wonder, are they doing enough? Are they making a big enough impact in people's lives? And so church, I would just challenge you this week to think about your pastor, and if your life has been impacted like mine has from one of these great pastors here at Crossroads, why not take a minute this week and write them a note of encouragement? Why not make it public, put a post on their Facebook page, or even better yet, probably most important thing you could do this week is why not bake your pastor a pie? That pastor probably like that more than anything else. But if you can't bake a pie, probably more seriously, the most important thing you could do for your pastor this week would be to just pray for him. And so, anyway, I just want to close by saying thank you to Clint and Justin and Tim and Drew and Matt for the impact that you are making in the lives, in my life, along with my family, my wife, and our kids here at Crossroads. The work you're doing is important, and we appreciate it. And so we just want to let you know that we love you and we appreciate you. Thank you.
That's it for this week. Look forward to worship.
Have you ever had to make a choice that affects the rest of your life? No matter where we go, struggles come when we say yes and no. You have to make the choice. Both do not work. The fences we are riding, the lines we are straddling, create unneeded tension, because all we're really doing is hiding. We have a choice to trust. Yes to what matters most to God, and no to what matters to the world.
Good to see you. Hey, last week we kicked off a series called Yes or No. And it comes from words that Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5 as he's preaching the Sermon on the Mount. And he's talking to this crowd of people about the commitments or the words that they are making or using. And the oaths that they are promising, the commitments that they're holding on to. And he warns them, he says, listen, you need to be careful. Don't commit yourself over here. Don't commit yourself over here because it all belongs to God. He said, but when you make a choice, when you make a commitment, it's a simple yes or no. It's not an and, it's an or, which means we choose. It's not we hold on to both, it's we choose. We don't live in the and, we live either yes or no, and we make commitments and we hold on to those commitments, those choices in life. Last week, we jumped in with the biggest choice that we'll ever make in life. And it's saying yes to Jesus and no to the world. Yes to Jesus and no to the world. And last week in this service, we had a couple people give their lives to Jesus and say yes to Jesus and no to the world. And that was exciting. And as we continue to move in this series, we're going to look at when we say yes to Jesus, then our priorities shift. When we say yes to Jesus and no to the world, there are things that begin to matter because they matter to God. There are choices that we begin to make because they matter most to Jesus. And when we say yes to Jesus, it means we say yes to the things that are important to Him. This morning, we all have one. We came from one. We have one. We're hopeful for one in the future. It's the family. And the choice that sits on the table this morning is this. Will we say yes to our family and say no to the busy patterns of this world? I want to pray, and then we're going to answer that this morning. Jesus, we love you. We're grateful this morning that we can worship, that we can celebrate, we can be excited to be here. And no matter why we came or however we walked into the room, God, you're good and that you bring forgiveness to us. And so, Father, I pray that during this time we bring ourselves to you. Father, I'm thankful that we can look at your word and we can see the importance of something that we have in life, family. And God, maybe our family is one right now, and we're hopeful for. Maybe our family is a whole bunch. And maybe our family has grown up and moved away. Oh, no matter where we're at, I pray this morning that your word will speak truth. And God, we will say yes to the things that you care about most. Jesus, I'm thankful that because of your son, Jesus, we as a room full of sinful people, we can meet here. We can learn about your truth in our lives. It's in your name we pray. Amen. There's a little boy that was in Emily's class last year. He's still at the school. And I've kind of gotten to know him. And he is a comedian. self-claimed comedian. But he always comes up to Emily with jokes and stories and everything. You never know what he's going to say. And the other day, Emily came home and she said, listen, I have to tell you this joke that this little boy told me. And I said, okay. And so then she told it and he says, imagine that you're in a completely dark room and there's no doors, and there's no windows, and there's no way to get out. What do you do? And Emily kind of smiled and looked back at him and she said, well, I'd probably take a nap. A couple other teachers made a guess or their guess. And I said, well, what are we supposed to do? And he goes, stop imagining. Some of the jokes I don't always think are funny that he tells, but that one got me, all right? Stop imagining. You see, sometimes when it comes to our family, we need to stop imagining and just take an assessment of where we're really at. Because sometimes when it comes to family, if we're a family that has younger kids right now, we live in the world of what maybe will happen, what we hope will happen, what we're praying will happen, but we don't know. And so we just live and we kind of imagine what the future will look like. Some of us imagine what our spouse is going to look like someday. We're still waiting for that. And so we imagine that we will get married. We're hopeful of that. All right. And so we kind of have this imagination of what that will look like, how that will play out. Some of us, we have had kids and they have moved away. And so we imagine our grandkids coming to visit. Some of us, we imagine being able to talk to our parents one more time. And we are hopeful that conversation, what it would look like. We imagine that conversation playing out, even though it's not possible. But when it comes to the family, and our families look different across the board, and that's great. But when it comes to our family, does it take priority over the other things in this world? And before we can really answer that question, instead of just imagining that it does, but in real practical life, when we look at the time spent, when we look at priorities, when we look at really how things are, whether you're a family of 1 or 2 or 15, is it a priority in life? Is it over other things of this world? Or are we just running to try to meet those expectations? And before we can answer that, we really have to understand God's view of the family. We have to understand kind of where it all started and what the family really comes from. You see, at the very beginning in Genesis chapter 1, it's where it all begins, okay? But it's also where the family begins. In Genesis chapter 1, God is in the process of creating everything, and he gets to the point where he's going to create mankind. And he assesses everything that he has made. He looks at everything he has created, and he says, you know what? I have something even more important in mind. I have something even greater designed. And in Genesis chapter 1, beginning in verse 26, God establishes the importance of and what the family looks like. He says, then God said, let us make mankind in our own image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the animals, and over all creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. And it was at this moment where the family was established. You see, there's a couple words that I want to point out this But one is when God uses the word over. You see, over means first. Over means on top of, which means on top of the birds and on top of the creatures on the ground, on top of everything else that I have made. Over that is mankind. Over that is a husband and a wife. Over that is a family. You see, when God creates mankind, it's not the intention of to just stay where they're at. When God creates mankind, it's a husband and it's a wife, and it comes with instructions. Wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, it comes with instructions. And it says, I don't want you to just be the two of you. He says, I want you to be fruitful and increase in number, which is how you create a family. You haven't put that together yet. That's how that happens. It's like, I want this to happen. I want there to be children. I want there to be multiple generations. I want there to be more and more and more. I want you to establish, Adam and Eve, I want you to establish the family on this earth. And so not only am I making you, I'm placing you above, with great importance, all the other things in this world. And when I do that, here's what I need you to do. Have kids. Grow. Not just the two of you, but increase in number. You see, God establishes when he creates mankind over the birds and the fish and all these other things. Over is the establishment of the family. So Adam and Eve are created. In the goodness of the garden, they live. Everything is right. They are given one instruction: don't eat from this tree. And then Adam and Eve have to choose. Yes, I will obey and just live with all the goodness of the garden. Or no, I will choose to eat from this tree that we're not supposed to. And so they're faced with a choice. And what's their choice? In Genesis chapter 3, verse 6, it says, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. And it's at this moment where the family that was perfectly established, living in the perfection of the garden, chose no. No, we will not obey. No, we will not listen. No, we will not do what God asked us to do. And when they make that choice, sin now enters the world. But not just enters the world, sin now enters the family. And when sin entered the family, all of a sudden they were embarrassed. They didn't figure that out yet. Now all of a sudden they're standing there naked and they're embarrassed by it. You see, when sin steps in, it shifts things from the way God designed it to be to the way the world wants it to be. And so they're asked to leave the garden. They're asked to leave where they're living. Except for they said no to listening to God about the tree, but they said yes to listening to God about multiplying. And so they got that part of the command down. And so all of a sudden they have kids. Adam and Eve have kids. They have some sons. Adam and Eve have two sons. Their names are Cain and Abel. And when you look at what Adam and Eve modeled, what they modeled was, I'm going to make a choice that gratifies me. And when they made that choice, they established choices that they were going to make in life. And then they paid for those choices as they were kicked out of the perfect garden. And the family has now shifted from what God wanted it to be to what it now is with sin in the world. And what happens when sin was modeled in the adults? It moves in to the choices of the kids. And in Genesis chapter 4, just one chapter later, it says, now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Now listen, I want to be real clear before we go any further. I am in no way supporting an original sin idea that I'm not jumping into that. I'm saying that the actions that we model often directs the way that future generations move. That's all I'm saying this morning. The actions that we choose direct the way that future generations move. In other words, our truth for this morning, what we model directs how they move. What we model directs how they move. And the they for us could be our kids at home. The they for us could be our kids that are grown up. The they for us could be our grandkids that come home. What we model directly impacts how those who are watching move. And maybe you say, well, Matt, I don't have kids, I don't have grandkids, and so who am I affecting? Listen, there are other people that watch the way that we move. There are people in our family that watch what we do and what we model. You see, the family is of utmost importance on God's priority list. He says it's over everything else that I've created. The family is given directions, different places throughout God's word. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6, it says, Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they're old, they will not turn from it. It doesn't say when they're old and have some understanding and wisdom of life, then teach them about the ways of God. It says start them there, which means establish that God is most important in our home. Start that God takes precedence over the other things of this world. Start. So that way, as they grow up, if it's the foundation, it's from the beginning, it's always there as a reference point in life. Deuteronomy chapter 11, beginning at verse 18, says, Fix these words of mine on your hearts and minds. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Write them on your door frames of your houses and on your gates, so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors, as many as the days that the heavens are above the earth. You see, the writer here, he's teaching, listen, the words of God are, we have to hold on to them. As families, it has to be in the middle of what we're doing. It doesn't say, just sit at home and read the words. It doesn't say that, friends. It says, where you go, make sure that God is the first spot. Where you go, when you lay down, when you get up, when you're walking along the road, around your door, listen, make sure that God has precedence in your home. Make sure that He is seen first before anything else of this world. It is a priority to God that we say yes to our families. And so it should be a priority to us as well. But if we were to be honest this morning, and if I were to poll the room, which I'm not going to, but if I were to poll the room and I just ask one question, what is it? What is it that keeps you from making your family more of a priority? We would get a whole bunch of different answers, but if I were to guess, I would guess that a lot of our answers could be traced back to one word. And that word? Time. Right? Time. If I had more time, then I would. If I had more time, I would go and see. If I had more time, I would go and visit. If I had more time, I would be able to show up. If I had more time. We have to go here, so I don't have time. You see, this one word would sum up, I'm going to guess, at least 50% of the answers in the room of why family is not more of a priority. And I could illustrate it in different ways and try to make sense of it, but Andy Stanley illustrates it in a way that I think is perfect. see, he has a concept. And Andy Stanley is a preacher and author. And he teaches this concept of choosing to cheat. And he illustrates it this way. If we were to make a list, of all of the priorities in our life, and next to each of those priorities, let's say work is a priority, family is a priority, kids are a priority, marriage is a priority, maybe being healthy and working out is a priority, and we have a hobby, that's a priority. And if we were to look at all of that big list, and we were to go one by one, and we were to list out, okay, work. And if we were to take each one of these and say, how many hours would I need to devote to this, to work, for me to feel like I'm doing my very best? And then write that number down. And then move down to the next one. How many hours would I need to devote to my spouse, to where they would feel as though they are the most important priority, and write those hours down. And then my kids, how many hours would I need to spend with my kids for them to get to the point where they say, Dad, we've played enough. Why don't you go to work or something? All right. How many hours would that take? And you write that number down. How many hours would it take for us to, go to the gym and work out to where we feel like we're actually accomplishing that goal, and write those hours down? And then you have this whole list of hours. And what he says is that what you will find is when you add up all of these things and all of those hours, what you will see is more hours than there are. Which means that we have to choose what on this list we're going to cheat. Because there's more hours than what we have in real life. There's more listed here than what we have. And so we have to choose to cheat somewhere. The problem is that too many of us, self included, are cheating family. And what happens when we say, it's just one more meeting, I've just got a little bit more to do at work, I'll be home just a little bit later tonight, what we do is we pass off the weight of that responsibility onto someone else. And maybe it's a spouse, and maybe it's our kids, and we make them hold that weight. And maybe our kids are what we're spending all of our time with, and we're choosing to cheat our spouse. And we hand that weight off, and we say, well, I'll have time for you when they move out. And we hand them the weight. And maybe a priority, just real life, maybe a priority on your list that you have lots of hours next to is a clean house. Maybe you obsess over a clean house and always wanting things to be clean, which means that you choose to cheat your kids so the house will be clean. You see, we have to choose to cheat something, because there's not enough time in our lives. There has to be a choice. Will I choose to cheat work because I know that my kids matter? Will I choose to cheat the clean house so I can go on a date with my spouse? What will we cheat? Because there's not enough time. And in order for us to care about the things that matter most to God, we have to begin to care less about the things that matter to the world. And some of these things, as we mentioned last week, can even be good things. For a lot of us on this list, church is listed. Church is a priority. Church gets a lot of hours. And we've got a big number sitting out here. We volunteer here, and we serve here, and we get up early, and we get this ready, and we're going to all of these church events, and it gets a lot of hours. And the problem is that if church takes precedence over teaching our kids about Jesus at home, then our ministry will fall apart. We can be the light of the world, but if we're a burnt out light bulb at home, it doesn't make a difference. We have to choose to cheat somewhere. And some of the things are good things. But what happens when we say yes to Jesus, in order to say yes to our families, we have to say no to good things in this world in order to say yes to the things that matter most to Him. Because what we model directs how they move. And friends, for those of us that have kids at home right now, when we say yes to our kids and yes to Jesus, we say yes to the church for years to come. Because what we model directs how they move. And listen, I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying. Listen, I am in no way saying, listen, we just need to be a little Bible thumping commune where we just sit and read all the time, all these things. Listen, no. That's not the life that I'm challenging us to. But together I am challenging us to communicate the love of Christ and the power of God in our homes on a regular basis. For too many, church is the first thing that gets bumped off the priority list. I got to go here and I got to go here, so we're not going to make it there. And what's sad is when we model that, we're going to have kids that live that in 15 years. What I don't want, friends, what I don't want in 15 years is the only relationship that you have with your kids is what you see through Facebook. Because right now, while they're in front of us, we can't stop checking ours. But we can't expect our grandkids to come home when all we did was teach their parents to always leave. Paul writes in Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, he says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." And then verse 2, it says this, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." Do not conform to the pattern of this world. The pattern of this world says to go. The pattern of this world says to be busy. The pattern of this world says to try to fit and cram everything in. And the priority of this and the pattern of this world says to move faster. The pattern of this world says climb higher. The pattern of this world says you can continue to run at this speed for forever. The pattern of this world says to go. But as followers of Jesus who say yes to Jesus, in order to say yes to Jesus in our homes, we have to shift the pattern in our homes. We can't say yes to Jesus and live the pattern of the world around us with our families. It does not work. We have to shift our family priority as well. If we're going to say yes to Jesus, then we say no to good things in this world so we can say yes to the best thing that matters to God, our family. What does this look like? This looks like us putting our phones down when we get home on the counter, not in our pocket. What does this look like? This looks like prioritizing reading the Bible with our kids and praying every night before we go to bed, not just rushing them to bed so we can sneak one more episode of Netflix in. What does this look like? It means that we bring God up in the middle of hard times. We don't have to tell our kids every detail of the hard things in life, but we can involve them in the conversation that God is faithful, God is good, God is present, and He is not leaving us. What does this look like? It looks like calling your grandkids on a regular basis. What does this look like? It looks like making amends with people in your family instead of holding on to grudges for years. What does this look like? It means preparing well for your family in the future. It means learning to love Jesus and prioritize Him. And what does this look like? It means dating people that love Jesus more than you do. So that way, in your future family, you can love Jesus together. What does this look like? Husbands in the room, dads in the room. It means leading your spouse and your family well. It means not making your wife always be the person that prays. Man up and do your job. Teach your families to love Jesus first more than anything else in this world. It means saying no at work sometimes in order to say yes to your family. When we pursue the peace of Christ in our homes are transformed into a small piece of God's kingdom. And what we model directs how they move. Several months ago, the school put on a daddy-daughter dance. And Reagan wanted to go. And I said, well, when is it? And she said, I think it's on a Sunday. Like, oh, Sunday, those are my most free days. And so we looked, and I figured out the date of it, and then I found out the time of it, and it was Sunday afternoon. And listen, I have a real passionate relationship with my pillow on Sunday afternoon, all right? Sunday afternoon nap for me is where it's at. But Reagan really wanted to go. And so I said, okay, we're going to go. And so we got in the car and we were all dressed up. I put on a tie, believe it or not, okay? I put on a tie and we were all dressed up, and we walk into the school gym. And even as an adult, now as a dad, you walk into the room and you kind of size up the room. Like, you kind of look, what other dads are here? What's going on? You kind of, just look at what's taking place. And so we walk in and I kind of look at the room and what's going on. And there's some girls kind of in the middle and they're kind of dancing and they're playing music. And I kind of look around and Reagan says, Daddy, there's Ella. And I said, okay, great. Because Ella's dad's one of my friends. So we're going to go hang out over there. And so we go over and we sit down, and then they started playing some songs, and Reagan said, Dad, let's dance. And here's what you need to know. As I looked at this room, there was a bunch of little girls in the center of the room, and they were kind of dancing. And I looked around, and there was this giant circle of tables and a bunch of dads doing this. And so when I heard her say, Dad, let's dance, it was like all the nightmares of middle school and high school where you're the only person dancing, like all just flooded my mind. And I was like, and I was faced with a choice. I recognized as soon as I get up and stand in the middle of this room as pretty much the only dad. Now, there was some others. I don't want to throw every guy under the bus, but I'm going to look like a complete idiot. Like, I recognized that right out of the gate. But she said, Dad, come on, let's dance. And so I said, okay, Riggs, let's do this. And we went out on the dance floor, and they were playing a song that I knew, and there's a dance to it, and so it kind of, and Ella wanted Brent to dance, so the two of us, we get up, and in pretty much a crowd of little elementary girls, there's me and Brent, like, busting a move, all right? Yeah, and I look back at one point, and there's Dad, Grandpa, weird uncle, I don't know. He's videotaping me and Brent, like just fixed on us. Thinking, I'm going to send you a bill later, buddy, and so we're just getting it. And then they switch the music. And in all of the dances that I've went to at weddings and everything like that, you know what I've yet to figure out how to dance to? Little Mermaid. All right? That one threw me for a loop. I don't know what to do for Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast, all right? I don't know. But then a slow song came on. And Rakes goes, Dad, do you want to go get a cookie? And I was like, no. I was like, these are the easy ones. Just stand there and sway, all right? And this is when the other dads got up because they also recognized that, like, oh, slow song, we just got to kind of rock, all right? And so the slow song comes on, and I tell Rakes, I said, no, we're dancing this one. She goes, oh, okay. And so I kind of grabbed her, and we just did the, what I'm calling the proud dad rock, all right? And she kept looking up at me and smiling. And I said, Riggs, what are you smiling at? She goes, I don't know. And so we just kept dancing to this song and kind of swaying back and forth. Other dads around the room were doing the same. And I said, Riggs, I love you. And I'm glad we got to do this. And she said, and she smiled with a big old grin. And she said, me too, Dad. And we just kept dancing, and pretty soon the music changed, and we went to Frozen and this, that, and the other. I really wanted to take a nap. I had other things around the house that I could have done. But looking down and seeing Reagan's smiling face said this mattered. And it didn't matter just right then. Because she still tells me, hey, Dad, remember when you and Brent were the only two dads dancing? Yeah, I sure do, Riggs. Thanks. You see, 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon meant the world. And you know what that opportunity gives me? It gives me a whole lot more credibility to talk about a God who loves her. It gives me ground to stand on. To say, Riggs, there's a Father in heaven who loves you more than I ever can. You see, when that Father, his family, he gave up his Son so that our families can have life. You see, our Father in heaven gave up his Son so you and I, we can dance down streets of gold. And he desperately, more than anything else, wants us to say yes to our families. Because he said yes to his family when it cost him his Son. Be transformed. No longer living in the pattern of this world. And for us to say yes to our family means that we model Jesus at home. It means that we cheat the things of this world so we can say yes for our family to spend eternity with us. Because what we model directs how they move. Why don't we go ahead and stand together? We're going to sing worship together. A time for us to reflect. Time for us to kind of look at who Jesus is and what he wants from us. As a parent, looking at God's word and his priority for the family, I'm really glad at this moment that his grace isn't just for my sin, but his grace is also for when I've not been the best parent. His grace is for when I said yes to the patterns of the world and bumped my kids down the list. And we're going to sing together a song that just talks about us coming to Jesus and saying, this is where I'm at. And this morning, that's what I want to challenge us with. Maybe we've been saying yes to the wrong things. And maybe for some of us, we think, Matt, it's too late. My kids are out of the house. Matt, it's too late. I've got grandkids now. Matt, it's too early. I don't even have a spouse yet or kids yet. Matt, my family's all mixed up and messed up. And listen, Jesus doesn't give us a deadline on the cross. He just calls us to come. And so this morning as we worship, he calls us to come and say yes. Yes to our families. Yes to what matters to him. Yes to setting ourselves up well for our family in the future. Yes to our grandkids. Yes to our kids who have moved away. Yes to Jesus and modeling him at home. And that when our kids grow up or when our kids come home, they see a model of Jesus more than just inside these walls. Let's go ahead and worship together.